Sessions for today. We have Karen Collins here. She's from MEAT, the New Hampshire Higher Education Assistance Fund. She's going to walk everybody through a few of the ins and outs of the financial aid process. So we're very happy that she's here to help us with this.
Thank you. Well, welcome. Again, I'm Karen. I'm one of the college counselors from the Center for College Planning, part of the MEAT network organizations. We're located in Concord, so we work with families all across the state. We're in all of the public high schools and most of the private high schools as well, working with families through this process. We have families with the admission and the financial aid process, but right now we're pretty busy with financial aid. This is the time when those seniors are awaiting their decisions from their colleges and their financial aid awards as well. We're going to talk a little bit about financial aid. It's going to be kind of a brief presentation. Ours is usually a pretty long, presentation, but let's get as much in as we possibly can for you guys before you have to move to the next session. If you have questions, just jump in at any time. Anything to share is great too. Sometimes experience from other parents can be really helpful to those who are going through it for the first time. So how many of you have students here who are freshmen? Sophomores? Juniors? Perfect, okay, excellent. So this is the exact presentation that we want to be talking about. I wasn't exactly sure what the mix of families was going to be. So, perfect. All right, let's get you guys going. All right, so this presentation is actually available up online on our website. When you came in, you might have picked up one of the books. If not, you can grab one on the way out, one of our financial aid insiders. Our website, all of our information is on here. All of our services are free to families in New Hampshire and to students who go to school in New Hampshire, so definitely take advantage of everything there is to offer. So you can get in touch with us there. There's also a newsletter that students can sign up for. We're writing this month's version as we speak. So with financial aid, there are actually two types of aid. We don't necessarily like that, but there are two types of financial aid that we're probably going to see on our financial aid awards for our students. The first type is the good stuff, that's gift aid. Gift aid is free money, so it's money we don't have to pay back. It's money our students don't have to pay back when they graduate from college. So again, that's the gift aid. Usually comes in two types. One type is merit. Merit is really based on something that our student has done well, that they're being rewarded for. So they're getting that gift aid for something that they've done well. Most often that's grades and test scores, but there are other things as well. Academics is, definitely, like I said, the biggest thing that we see, but athletics is something that we see as well. So some of your students might be playing a sport here and they're going to continue on and play at a Division I or Division II school. They may see some money for that. We also see artistic talents. So if students are performing artists, or if they're musicians, or if they're dancers, whatever it may be, they may go to college and they may have an audition, and they may do really well in that audition and get some money to continue in that particular major. Community service is another big area that we see students receiving some money for. So if students are doing a lot of community service, a lot of leadership types of positions, they may see some merit-based aid in that direction as well. So that's really entirely based on something that our student has done well. The other type of gift aid that students might see is need-based. And that really is based on our family finances. So it's the finances of the parents as well as the student, and filing the necessary paperwork. They tell us how much we need, what our need is. We don't get to tell them, by the way. Based on those figures, students may receive some grants from the college as well. So you can get both. Students can get both. Sometimes colleges will distribute most of their financial aid in one particular way. So some schools say, we're going to give a lot of merit-based financial aid with our own institutional money. Other colleges say, what, most of our students coming in here are merit-worthy, so we're not really doing the merit-based financial aid as much, we're doing need-based financial aid. So one thing that's really important as you're putting together the list of schools that your student is going to be looking at, which is really coming up now, is to really have a balance of types of schools on the list. So if you are seeking schools that are offering merit-based aid because your student is an excellent student, you want to make sure that that's what they're offering. So that's one of the big things in the process, because if they're not offering it, you're not going to get any. Whether your student is the valedictorian or 34th in the class, it doesn't matter, because that merit-based aid is not going to be available to the students. If you're seeking need-based aid, make sure that that's something that that college is offering as well. Your student might get a combination of both, but it's really important. One of the biggest things that you can do to ensure that that financial aid award is where you want it to be is to apply to the right types of colleges. That's okay, don't worry. The right types of colleges when your student is putting that list together. The other type of aid that the students will see is self-help aid. So that's the other piece of financial aid that they'll see on their awards. They're going to see a federal student loan. So all of our students, if they apply for financial aid, are going to get a federal student loan. It's going to be called a direct loan or a Stafford loan. When they're freshmen, they can borrow $5,500. When they're sophomores, they can borrow $6,500. And then when they're juniors and seniors, they can borrow $7,500. Parents, that's in their name. We don't co-sign for that. So when it comes time to repay that student loan, the bill comes to them. It does not come to us. If they default on that loan, that comes to them. It does not come to us. So that is entirely in their name that they're able to borrow. It's not a ton of money, but it's a way for them to contribute to their education for sure. It's a very simple process. Every student is offered that money as they go through. Work study is something that is need-based. So some colleges are going to offer work study money for their students. That doesn't come off of our bill, so if it says work study $2,500 on an award from a college, that won't be subtracted. What will happen is our students have to go to campus, they find a little job, they work that job a certain number of hours per week, and they'll get a paycheck. Usually the paycheck comes every 2 weeks on campus, and for a lot of families, that's spending money. It might be book money. For me, for my daughter, it's money that we say when she calls home and says, hey mom, do you want to transfer some money into my account? I say, hey girl, you have that thing called a job. So you can use it like that, feel free to go ahead and do that. But it is nice for them to have a little bit of spending money in their pockets because they're going to want to go and do some stuff with their friends, whether that's going out to dinner or whether it's going to a concert or whatever it may be. And that's their way of making, a little bit of a contribution to their education. So they're going to get a combination of things as they're awarded their financial aid from their different colleges. When you're applying for financial aid, you might see 2 different forms. Probably many of your families will see 2 different forms that you're going to have to complete. The first one up there is the Fafsa form. The Fafsa is the free application for federal student aid, and that one, as the name indicates, is free to file. So I always tell families, go through the process, at least in the freshman year when your student goes to college. I would go through the financial aid process to see what happens. I've done this for 27 plus years. My daughter's a junior now, but when we were going through the financial aid process, I was surprised by some of the schools, the awards that she actually received at some of the schools based on what I know of the process. So I think it's important to go through, at least in the student's freshman year, and also there are a lot of scholarships that ask for students to have completed the Fafsa form. So it's not exciting. You're not going to do cartwheels and say, wow, that was the best day of my life filling out that Fafsa form, but it's not horrible either. So if you file your taxes, that Fafsa form is going to be pretty simple for you. If somebody else files it for you, it does follow along with your tax form, so it tells you this line, we're looking for your adjusted gross income, which is line 37 on a 1040. Please put it here. So it does follow along with our taxes. So it's, although again, it's not exciting, it's something that we probably should go through the process for our students in their freshman year at least. It is online, so it's typically, I would say 99% of all families are filing this online these days. This is something that we do in our office as well. So actually today while I'm here, my colleagues are back in our office filing FAFSAs for about 25 families today alone. So we're available Monday through Friday and some Saturdays during the year as well to file families' FAFSAs. It's free. We tell you what to bring. You call, you make an appointment, come on in. It takes about an hour and we'll send that off to all of your schools that day. So pretty easy process, even if we have a lot of families that will fill it out at home and then they just want us to look at it because before they press send, they just really want somebody to take a peek. It's one of those things that I wanted my colleagues to take a peek at mine too. I've done it, like I said, I've done this for 27 years, but it's your money, it's scary, it's your child. So you just want somebody else to have a set of eyes, that's totally fine too. The CSS profile, I'm guessing that many of you are gonna see this form in addition to the FAFSA form. CSS is used by some of the private colleges, and typically some of the more competitive private colleges are looking for CSS profile in addition to FAFSA. So you have to file FAFSA, but you also have to file CSS profile for these particular schools. In New Hampshire, the only 2 schools that require it are Dartmouth and St. Anselm College, but as you go into Massachusetts, you're going to see a lot more schools that are requiring CSS profile. FAFSA is about 100 questions, CSS profile is about 300 questions. So yeah, it's super exciting and everybody just loves to have to file a CSS profile in addition. FAFSA is very income driven, so it really does focus on adjusted gross income, how much did mom earn, how much did dad earn, how much did the student earn. CSS profile is very asset driven, so here are where some of the things like what is the value of your home, how much did you pay for it, when did you buy it, how much is it worth today, those types of things are going to take place on CSS profile, which you won't see on the FAFSA form. So FAFSA doesn't include your home, your primary residence, as an asset. So CSS Profile is one that I suspect that many of your students are going to be looking at. I'm guessing, Colin, yeah, a lot of your students are looking at schools that would require CSS Profile. So just be sure that you check on deadlines. The tricky thing about admissions and financial aid really is that there's no one deadline, which is unfortunate, you know, so it makes it really fun for the school counseling office, and it really makes it fun for you as parents and for your students to keep everything organized during this season. The admissions deadlines will be all over the place, as will the financial aid deadlines. And because they've moved financial aid to October, we can now file for financial aid in October. Those deadlines have kind of moved around a lot more because the season has widened out. So just watch deadlines, be sure that you meet them because you don't want to miss anything like that with your schools. So let's talk first a little bit about FAFSA. Really what the FAFSA does is it gathers the same information from family to family. So the same information is going to be taken from my family as it is from your family, and they're going to put this in a little magic formula behind the scenes, and the result of that, when we press submit, is what's called an EFC, or an expected family contribution. That EFC is what drives financial aid. So whatever that expected family contribution is, and basically that's the amount of money that they say we can afford to pay for 1 year of our child's education, because we file this each year that they're an undergraduate. By the way, you won't agree with how much that is. So they'll tell us how much we can afford, and you'll say, really, that's interesting. You might think you need to sell your younger child or something to be able to do that. But that number drives financial aid. That's the number that goes to the schools. And the schools say, okay, so if your expected family contribution is $20,000, we think you can afford that. So we're not going to give you $20,000, but we're going to try to give you everything above that that doesn't meet our needs. So they are going to put together an award based on this expected family contribution. So something, something interesting to think about. So the FAFSA looks like this. When you go to their website, it's fafsa.gov. It looks like this. For those of you who are going to be starting this for the first time, you click on Start a New FAFSA, and it brings you into a screen. Couple things to be aware of, that this is your student's FAFSA, although most of the time it's your parents filing the FAFSA form. It is the student's FAFSA, so make sure that you're filling it out with that in mind as you go through the process. They do have specialists that you can give a call anytime, so if you happen to be filing this on a weekend and we're not open and you can't reach one of us, you can call the FAFSA specialist. They have a number that's right there on the screens with you. They also have a Twitter account. I understand that they chat online. I've never tried that, so I'm not sure how that one goes, but I will say that that 1-800-4FED-AID number is very helpful. During the daytime, we're in the office as well, so you can give us a call if you have questions about that. So that's what it's going to look like. To sign the FAFSA form, because this is all online now, we have to have what's called an FSA ID. So the student going off to college has to have their own unique FSA ID so that they can sign, and then one of the parents. It doesn't matter which parent, but just one of the parents has to have an FSA ID as well to sign that FAFSA form. This is something you can get at any time. It doesn't, I don't know if any of you have older students where back in the day we had to get the PIN number, and the PIN took a little while for us to get. It took like 72 hours sometimes. This is immediate. You can do this while you're filing your FAFSA, or you can do it today. So whenever you want to get a PIN or a FSA ID, you can go ahead and do that. It takes a little bit of time. There's a bunch of steps that you have to go through. You're going to verify your email address so that if you happen to forget this, even though we say we need to remember it, if you happen to misplace what this FSA ID is from year to year, you can use your email to retrieve your username and password. You can also use your cell phone number now. So I would go through all those steps to verify that information. They send you a code to your email, they send you a code to your phone, and that verifies it, and you can retrieve that information later, which is definitely worth it. As I sit in my office yesterday all day, it was one of those days of totally forgot what my FSA ID was. I didn't verify it. I don't know what to do. So we were on the phone with some specialists during the day yesterday. Irs data retrieval tool is fairly new to the process. It is a way for us to bring our tax information right into the FAFSA form. So when you get to the point where it's the parent section and you're going to be putting in all of your adjusted gross income, your tax information, all that is going to go in there. You have the opportunity to use this Irs Drt. It goes right out to the IRS website. You'll see your name in there as we bring it out to the website. It'll ask you how you file taxes, head of household, married filing jointly, and then it'll ask you for your mailing address. You need to put your mailing address in the form just as it is on your tax form. So if you live at Main Street and on your tax form it was written ST, you have to put ST, not STRET, or it doesn't match in the system. But once you do that, you're able to pull your tax information right into the Fafsa form. And it puts it on all the right lines for you, which is pretty awesome and pretty quick. But the other thing that makes that really nice is that your information is then verified with the financial aid offices. Because that's come right from the IRS, and because you're using prior year tax information, so this year seniors use 2016 tax information. For you guys, you're going to use 2017 tax information, which you're going to be filing very soon, so it's all done. It's already been through the process. So it's verified in that system, and you'll notice right on the Fafsa form, it'll say transferred from the IRS. And that's really good because financial aid knows information's correct and they're happy with that.
Is that assuming you're filing electronically?
No, you don't have to file electronically. You can actually file on paper as well. Yep. It just, as long as it's in the system, the IRS system, it's good to go. Yeah. And it usually works most of the time, which is really awesome. This year it's been working very, very well. The only time it doesn't work is if perhaps you file, you're married but you file separately. Some families will do that for student loan. There's a lot of student loan forgiveness programs where it's better to do that. So some families are doing that. That you can't pull in because you can't pull it in twice, so you would have to do it separately. But for the most part, this works very nicely and it is verified. You can do it also for your student. So if your student has filed taxes and will be filing this year, you can pull that student's information in as well. So it works really nicely. And again, this is something that we can help with in our office too. So pretty helpful. So some of the questions or some of the things that we see as families file this that we'd like to help you out with a little bit is one of the things, as I was just saying, this is your student's Fafsa. So I had a nice mom in my office yesterday who filed the Fafsa under her name. So she used her FSA ID, she used her name, and I said, well, that's not going to get your student financial aid. That would get you financial aid if you were heading off to college, but it won't get you financial aid. So it is your student's Fafsa, so make sure that all that initial information is student. When you go in, it's going to say student along the side and it's going to be blue. Once it gets to us, the parents, it's going to turn purple and it's going to say parent on the side. So there is a section for parents. It will go back to your student once we fill out the parent section, but just be careful. One of the things that we see a lot is that because parents are filling it out and they're just kind of going through the first screen, is that they will put in married for the student, and that automatically makes them an independent student, which screws up financial aid, and we know our kids aren't married yet. So it's just one of those things that we have to catch a little bit later on in the process. Also, be real careful about social security numbers when you enter those. I had a student in my office who entered hers incorrectly, and you just have to start over because it's now not going to match in the system. So just be careful that you get your student's social security in there initially. You answer the questions according to your students. So always a student's Fafsa. And when you're going back in later, use your student's FSA ID to get in. Otherwise, it's going to open a Fafsa for yourself, which is okay, but not what we're looking for. Deadlines, like I said, deadlines are going to be different from school to school, so just kind of be on top of that. Some of them are going to be early in the process, especially if your student is looking at early decision or early action at some of their schools. That is going to push that process earlier, and it could be as early as October that they're looking for some of these forms. So just be aware and look at each website for your students' schools and just make sure you know what's happening. I would make a calendar. During the senior year, we had a calendar that was just college, and we stuck it on the refrigerator because that's where everybody goes all the time in our house. So we stuck it on the refrigerator, and it just was Katie's college stuff. And it was deadlines, and it was interviews, and it was all the college things that we needed to know. The sports and the dance and the dog vet appointments were all on another one, so we could just see that every day. And again, I've done this for a long time, and it comes up quick on you, some of those deadlines. So it's good to have that visual as you go along the process. So one of the things that we do get asked a lot, you'll notice these dates are not correct for you guys, but for this year's students, some of them said, 2016 wasn't really how things look financially in our house now, can we use 2017 tax information instead on the FAFSA because it'll be more accurate? We can't. This is the federal government, so when they say 16, we use 16. Or when they say 17 for you guys, you're gonna use 17. But that means that we're gonna wanna notify our colleges. So if things have changed in your house since this tax year information for next year, you'll wanna let those schools know. So some families, you know, different jobs, or we might have switched jobs and we might be earning more or less. We might have won the lottery, that would have been awesome. We may not wanna tell them that right away. But if we have lost a job or if we're retired, we do wanna tell them that because that's gonna change the financial picture. Another thing that we see a lot too is students who are, or families who are receiving child support, but when that student turns 18, that child support's no longer there. Now they should know that, that information should be there, but if you're applying out of state in particular, that financial aid office may not pick up on that because you have to report child support as income on the FAFSA form, so you'd want to let those colleges know that that child support's not coming in for that child anymore. So anything that changes, you can file what's called a special circumstances form, and those are usually available on the website of the financial aid office, and you fill it out and you tell them your information. So anything unusual, high unreimbursed medical expenses, if one of our moms or dads comes to live with us, that's another dependent in our home. Private school tuition. You know, those types of things are things that you might want to let a financial aid office know about so they can see that. A lot of times I get asked by a dad, and sometimes I think he's joking, but sometimes I'm not sure, is if we can kick the student out of the house and send them off to live with grandma or something and say that they're independent, we're no longer, you know, financing that particular student. We can't. There are a lot of things that make a student independent, but just saying, hey, go live with grandma for a little bit is not going to do it. To be independent, students have to be 24, or they have to be married, or they have to have a child of their own that they support financially. If they're graduate students, they're automatically going to be independent. So if you have a student who's going to be going through, you know, like a physical therapy program or something like that, once they hit that grad portion of the program, they are going to be independent. At most schools, that's not always the case in that particular thing, but if they're a graduate student, they're independent. If they're in the military, or if they're a veteran of the military, they're independent automatically. If they are, if they were in foster care, or if they were adopted after the age of 13, then they would be independent. If they're in a legal guardianship, they would be considered independent. So if they are, you know, living with their grandparents, and that has been set up by the state that that's a legal guardianship, then that is a situation where a student is independent. If students are a ward of the court, so both of their parents are deceased, they are independent. If they are an emancipated minor, they would be considered independent. Or if they are homeless or at risk of being homeless, they would be considered independent. So those are the independent status automatic for students in the process. But other than that, our students are going to be dependent and require our finances on that financial aid form. There are some exceptions, and if, you know, the school counselors here will know about them, so if the student is in that situation, I'm sure they're going to talk with you and let you know about that. Which parents are included on the FAFSA form? We are asked this often. In the situation where there's been a divorce in a family, on the FAFSA form, the parent is the parent with whom the child resides 51 or more % of the time. So physically, where is that child 51 or more % of the time? So then a lot of families say, well, hey, you know what, we split it 50-50. And financial aid says there's 365 days in a year, so what's that 356? Well, we split that too. So then the college says, you know what you need to do, you need to use the parent who provides the most financial support for the student. So a lot of times they look at things like who's carrying health insurance for the student, who pays for schooling, those types of things. So on the FAFSA, the parent is the parent where that child is living physically. Doesn't matter who claims the child on the tax forms, it doesn't matter what a divorce decree says, none of that matters, it's really physical custody, where is that child. So that parent will file the FAFSA form. The other biological parent is not going to appear on the FAFSA. They're not going to fill out any FAFSA form at all. Css Profile works a little bit differently. It's still that custodial parent that files the Css Profile, but they also have what's called a non-custodial form. So the other parent gets emailed the form to complete as well. So on the Css Profile, as many as 4 parents may show up on that form. Now, you don't sit in the same room and complete those forms together, by the way. So, you know, they're not gonna say, hey, get together and let's all chit chat. They get sent separately, they get compiled in financial aid. I get asked that a lot too. Do we have to talk about this? No, you don't. You should, but you don't have to. Excuse me, no share. Special circumstances, again, this is something that's available on every financial aid website where you can share any of that information that might be necessary that wasn't on the form that you can see. So this chart is actually in the book that you'll pick up, because I know this one's one that a lot of families like to take a peek at. This is kind of what goes on to the Fafsa form. So you can see that income is what drives this form. The percentage of our income is what really puts that EFC into place for most families. Things that aren't included, again, we're not going to include our home as an asset, so where we are living is not an asset. If we have a second home, that is an asset. A rental property, that is an asset. Those would go on there. We do not include retirement funds as assets on the Fafsa form. CSS, yes, but not on Fafsa form. Things like 529 plans, those are going to be an asset of a parent on the Fafsa form, which is actually a good thing. On the Fafsa, we have what's called asset protection allowance built in for us as parents. Students don't have that, but we do, and it's based on our age. So the nice way of putting this is the closer to retirement age we are, the more protected our assets become. So the elder, you know, the parent is, the older the parent is, then the more assets are protected in that process. So you can see on this example here, I don't know if you can see because it's down really low. Say a family, the eldest parent was 48 years old, asset protection allowance would be about $21,000. So you can have that in your cash, savings, checking accounts. You can have it in stocks or bonds or mutual funds or 529 plans or under the mattress, whatever your method of savings happens to be, and that's not going to count in the formula. If you have more than that, you're going to click yes, I have more than that, and you're going to answer 3 questions. The 3 questions are, as of today, what do you have in cash, savings, and checking? So we file this form on the day before we get paid, not the day we get paid, right? So what do we have in cash, savings, and checking? The second question is, what are your investments? So that's where things like stocks and bonds and mutual funds, money market accounts, 529 plans. If you have a second property, that will go in background. The third question is do you have a business? And you're going to include your business assets, but only if you have more than 100 employees, or if you have a working farm. Okay, so those are the 3 questions about assets on the Fafsa form. And again, parents have this asset protection allowance. If you have more than that protection allowance, you'll answer the questions. That protection allowance will go into place, and anything above that will go into the formula at about 5.6%. Okay, so assets aren't the biggest part of this. It's really our income. You can see 22 to 47% of our income. Excuse me, it's going to be looked at. For our kids, very different. Anything that they have in their accounts from $1 is going to be looked at as 20% available in that formula. So everything they have from $1, 20% of that is going to go into the EFC. So things are really different for kids. Although they think they're the heads of the household, they're not, bless you, at this age, so they don't have that asset protection built into place. So their money is much more available to that college formula than ours is. Anything that our students have in terms of what they're earning as well, 50% of what they earn will go into that expected family contribution, but only above about $6,500. So a lot of our students aren't earning more than that 65, so nothing's showing up in EFC based on that. So this is just a little chart to give you some ideas of what kind of goes in terms of planning ahead for the next year when you're starting to file these forms. So take a peek at that, give us a call. If you have any questions, let us know. We can answer those for you. Yeah?
Where did you say those booklets were? Is that online or is that?
Nope,